there's a very well-known African saying that until the lions have their own storytellers, the history of the hunt will always glorify the hunter. And so, while we spend a large amount of time criticizing, colonial or Marxist or Nehruvian historians, the fact of the matter is the alternative narrative has to be written. A flawed narrative is never replaced by criticism. It is replaced by a different narrative. So that different narrative has to be written. And no amount of raging on Twitter or writing complex Sanskrit in Latin letters with capital letters in the middle of the word, and all this is going to change it. You have to write the new narrative. So what I would say is that that new narrative needs to be written. And until that new narrative has not been written, you cannot go out and even change the textbooks. Because what will you replace it with? So this is the most important thing that needs to be done, a systematic writing of rewriting of the story. And incidentally, not just adding in, removing one set of biases and adding another set of biases. It has to be done systematically with looking at what the existing evidence is and taking a fair judgment of it. And since you brought up the Aryan invasion theory, let me say that very often what happens is that we try to replace with something called the out of India theory. Now, in fact, the evidence that exists is of a much more complex movements of people going back to the Stone Age. So, yes, there is a link between, say, Iranians and ancient Indians. It goes back a very long way. But to think of it, oh, no, it wasn't some Aryans coming into India, it was Aryans going out. Actually, what seems to be from the genetic data is, in fact, you've got to think of it completely differently. You have to understand that the Balochistan was, in fact, for much of prehistory, was in fact possible. It was actually grassland. And India and Iran was a continuum. It shouldn't be surprising. Just look at a map, they're right next to each other. And therefore, it is not surprising that the Eastern Iranians and the Indians shared culture, civilization, and genes from the Stone Age. So, yes, of course, there is, linkages, but those linkages are not, about a unidirectional one-time movement. So replacing a unidirectional one-time movement inward with one which is a unidirectional one-time movement outward doesn't actually improve the story. It is a much more complex history of back and forth movement, of going back a very, very long time, going back, as I said, to the end of the last ice age, and cycles of this interaction happening with people going in, coming back, interaction with these same people. And by the way, it doesn't only happen with our western side, it happens with our eastern side. There are many Indians who derive their ancestry from the Southeast Asia. So there are linkages going back to ancient times in both ways, and through this mixing and merging, Indian civilization has appeared. And we need to celebrate this ability of Indian civilization to assimilate and grow and survive through these cycles. So what is important is a writing of this story with evidence and with fairness. And that is important to do this. And it's shocking that 70 years after independence, we are still wasting too much of our time debating what the errors of the previous generations of historians and not spending time writing the new history.